I hate to say it, but I don't. But I was right about the Google Pixel 10 and the Tensor 5, and I told you so. So, what we're seeing when it comes to the Pixel 10 and the Tensor 5 is, of course, a lot of people whining and whining about the benchmarks, which I'm telling you don't matter. But here's the thing, a lot of people thought whenever we switched over to TSMC, no longer with Google working with Samsung for them to make the Tensor chip, everybody seemed to think that once we switched over to TSMC, that things were going to change, that we're going to see this monstrous change in power, that they were going to be chasing benchmarks, that they were trying to be keeping up with Snapdragon and Apple in every single way whenever it came to power. And that's just not the case. And I said that wasn't going to be the case. And even Google themselves said, I think it was earlier this year or late last year, they talked about the Google Pixel phone and the Tensor chipset, and it's all about experience. It's about the phone experience, it's about the AI, it's about delivering on software and features and not just chasing benchmarks. And I guess we can comment on benchmarks, which are not even completely official yet, right? So I don't even want to talk about the benchmarks too much because, one, I saw something the other day talking about the GPU and how the GPU is so inferior to the GPU in the Tensor 4, blah, blah, blah. Well, then we find out that apparently it was taken off of a demo unit and it didn't even have the updated software with the drivers to take advantage of the full power of the chipset anyway. So we'll probably see better, more definitive benchmarks and Antutu and all that stuff, Geekbench scores, as we roll into this week because, well, we can finally put out reviews on the phone starting tomorrow. But if at face value, what we've seen on benchmark testing, I want to talk about some of the hardware stuff. There are tremendous updates. So I get most of my information when it comes to benchmark from a website called Nano Review, and just some of the stuff that we've seen off based off the architecture alone. Last year's configuration with Tensor 4 was one primary core, three mid cores, and four low power cores, efficiency cores. And the top speed was 3.1 gigahertz, which was fine. It's no slouch, plenty of power. I've been saying for the longest time, you get over 3 gigahertz, you're going to be golden. You're going to be able to do whatever you want to do and should have a pretty seamless flagship level performance experience when you use your phone. Well, this time it's bumped up over 20%. The primary core is now 3.78 gigahertz. So that's a big jump in power. And then now we have five mid range cores instead of three, and we have two low power cores instead of four. So that means that for a lot of the stuff that this chip is going to handle, it's going to do a lot of that stuff with those mid range cores, which are clocked at 3 gigahertz. So it's not just that the primary core is over 3 gigahertz, it's at almost 4 now, which is substantial. And then the mid range cores, last year we had three mid range cores at 2.6 gigahertz. Now we have five at 3.05. So the five mid range cores are almost as powerful as the primary core last year. So what that means is there's been a shift, especially when gearing more towards those low function budget cores, those economy efficiency ones, bumping that up in the mid range department. The mid range cores handle a lot. And then for the power when you need it, you're going to get that primary core at almost 4 gigahertz, which these numbers I think are important to talk about. And then with the UFS 4 and then other stuff that's going on, I think that that's good. And then from what I've seen based off of this nanoreview.net, and for what it's worth, so they're saying the Tensor 5 benchmark Antutu score 150 or 1,508,000 versus 1,291. So there are significant updates. And the biggest thing I think most people are complaining about is the GPU. We'll see what we get out of the GPU because I think from what I was reading, it may not even support ray tracing, which if it doesn't, I mean, I really feel like they should do that because that would give us a leg up in the gaming department. Of course, Apple and Qualcomm with their Snapdragon chips, they support ray tracing. But the biggest thing is you can play the games. Like you can play AAA games on this phone, just like you can play AAA games on the Pixel 9 series phones, the Pixel 8. A lot of these games haven't changed in years, and we've been maxing them out for years. And what people don't realize, though, a lot of the issues you have when it comes to the games, if it gets warmer, if it hiccups, if it doesn't perform as well as you would expect it to, a lot of that actually is more on optimization. It's not so much that the hardware can't do it, it's that the software developers for these games don't optimize for the chipset because it's new. It's a different platform. It's different architecture. There's different things going on. So because there's so many Snapdragon chips out there, Snapdragon is the gold standard for Android. It's optimized out the wazoo, especially for the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor and the main flagships. Same thing with Apple and their A series processors. There's such a large audience out there. These apps and these games, they're all fine tuned for these chipsets. So whenever you take a look at the Tensor chipset, raw power, it can do it. Now, as the software, the drivers, the games, is all that stuff optimized for it? Probably not, especially not out of the gate. So probably what you'll see is as time goes on that the performance may even get better in some of these things just because by virtue of it being out there, it's available, and finally the games and the apps and the software get optimized for them. Now, here's the real benefit, and this is what we've talked about forever with Apple. When you have the hardware and the software, they can take advantage of those things and they can make them more efficient, and they can rely on and use a lot of their own in-house proprietary stuff. Google makes Android, Google designs and they make the Pixel phone. They help design in conjunction the Tensor 5 with TSMC. They manufacture it's a 3 nanometer chip. So we dropped down from 4 nanometer to 3 nanometer, which that off the bat is going to give you a more efficient, more powerful chipset with less energy and less heat. That is a fantastic thing. And then on top of that, we've got all of Google's proprietary stuff. So we've got the most powerful tensor processing unit in there ever, which from what I'm seeing is supposed to be 60% better when it comes to processing AI tests. The Google Pixel phone's already good with that stuff. We have the new generation of Google's Gemini Nano on-device AI model, which is more efficient and better than ever. And it can handle, I think, up to almost 3 times more tokens than it could previously. So Google is all in on optimization, software efficiencies, and AI and their AI models. That's the big thing. If you take a look back when we went from the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 to the 3, from the 3 to the Elite, it wasn't so much with a lot of those chips up until the Elite that they bumped up significantly in processing power. It was adding more processing and capabilities for AI. So that's really what Google is doing here. In addition to giving us over 20% higher clock speed and giving us over 20-30% higher clock speed, don't quote me on the math, but whenever it comes to the mid-range cores, they've realigned the power and the performance into higher mid-range cores and a higher processing speed to take advantage of a lot of this stuff and then use their own proprietary models. See, when you have a chipset like a Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, it can handle a lot of things through brute strength and raw power, but it's not going to run the Gemini Nano model as well as the Google Pixel is, just because it's not fine-tuned and optimized for it the same way that Google has done it with their chip. They make the processor, they make the phone, they make the operating system, they make the AI models. So where you're going to see a lot of these benefits is whenever it comes to a lot of the AI features you're going to see that are homegrown, that they make these things, they make the AI models, whatever. It's like if you're fluent in a language and you speak it naturally, you're going to do it better than somebody who's got to learn it and try and pick that up later. Like it's like a second language for somebody. At some point you do become fluent and you may be very competent in it and you maybe will be capable in speaking in that language, but you're never going to be as good as somebody who is natively spoken that language their whole life. At some point, of course, you'll probably get there just from doing it. Like if you move to France and you start speaking French, maybe after a year or two you'll speak it pretty well, but you're not going to speak it as well as somebody who's been speaking it for 30 years. So not to say you can't speak it fluently and you won't be very, very good later on in life. And that's what we get with these chipsets. As we get these new models and as these other chipsets, they start working for these things better, things will get more optimized. It's just like I mentioned a minute ago with the software optimization for the games. The Tensor chip can brute force run those things and it can run them well, but that extra fine tuning is what takes it to the next level. But again, the new Tensor processor unit that's in there, the TPU, 60% more powerful, handle over almost 3 times as many more tokens, is more than double. And then all the different AI models that they do, it's just something that takes it to the next level. And that's what you get with the Edge, with Google and the Pixel phones and the Tensor chipset. Is it going to knock it out of the park and get a 3 million score on the benchmark or 4 million or whatever? No, but it doesn't need to. And that's not saying, it's not like, oh, well, it's just making excuses. It doesn't need that. Like we've moved so far beyond just looking at raw benchmark scores. That was something that really mattered a lot more maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. it is an indicator of how powerful something is. But there's so much stuff that's done through software, so much stuff that's done through AI models, so much stuff that's done that's not just hardware anymore. It's not just, okay, if I throw everything at this and I run this generic bench testing software, how well will it do? That's not going to give you the true representation of what the phone can do. And again, it's like a 3.8 gigahertz chipset. It performs well. I've been using the phone for about a week now. Thoroughly impressed with it. It is super snappy, super sharp. It's fast, and it really is an enjoyable experience. And that's what Google's going for: experience, experience, experience. There's plenty of power there, but dialing in and that next level experience, that next generation Android experience, and taking AI to the next level. It's funny. People are like, oh well, it benchmarks. It runs like an iPhone 15. Well, the iPhone 15 can't run AI stuff. It can't. If you have the 15 Pro, it can, but a lot of these phones they can't handle that stuff. And Apple's AI is so dismally behind everything else, it's not even funny. So Google's leading the way in that department, leading the way in computational photography, leading the way in AI and software stuff, coming out with new features, and just making a really good experience. And Android 16 has been solid, and especially with Material 3 Expressive, it looks and it feels gorgeous. So that's all I got. That's all I'm going to comment for now when it comes to that stuff. But I wanted to kind of explain it. And I told you guys from the get-go, months ago, I said things are not going to change. Google has a fundamental plan and a mission that they're executing on the experience and what they want their phones to be. And it's not just chasing benchmark scores. So that's all I got. If you have any questions, comments, gripes, concerns, complaints, all that stuff, please, of course, go to the comment section. I'll do my best to get back with you. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And it's Pixel season, so you want to be here for this stuff. And as you can see, I've got another backdrop. You might even just heard the train that went by. I am traveling again. I'm in London right now because there's another phone release that I'm here for this week that I'll have videos on that you'll get to see in the next couple of days, which are exciting. It's not Pixel related, but it's some cool stuff. And a lot of people have been maybe waiting for this phone that might be coming out that I might be having a review on soon. So stay tuned. Lots of exciting stuff. And that's all I got. So as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.